The hum of the fluorescent lights felt unusually loud in the otherwise empty office. I was stacking files at my desk when she appeared in the doorway, her heels clicking softly against the linoleum. Just like that, the air shifted, thickened, warmer, somehow alive. She was impossibly graceful for someone who had seen 40-something winters. Hair streaked with silver framed a face that could still disarm anyone in a room with a single glance. And yet, there was something subtly vulnerable in the set of her shoulders, the slight hesitation in her smile. "Staying late again, mister?" Her voice carried over the faint whir of the printer, calm and controlled, but with a hint of curiosity that made me suddenly aware of how my hands rested on the papers. "Ah, yes," I muttered, trying not to sound breathless. "Just finishing up." She walked closer, each step measured, deliberate. My chest tightened as the scent of her, soft, faintly floral, unmistakably her, drifted across my space. When she leaned to pick up a folder I had left on the edge of my desk, our fingers brushed. It was brief, almost accidental, but it jolted me more than I expected. "Overtime isn't optional tonight," she said, her words low, almost a whisper. Yet they seemed to echo louder than the office AC. Then, as if testing me, she moved to lock the door behind us. I froze. My mind stumbled over the absurdity and thrill of it. The office was ours alone, and yet every second felt dangerously intimate. She straightened and leaned back against the edge of the desk, arms crossed loosely, eyes holding mine longer than necessary. I noticed the small tremble in her fingers, the subtle bite of her lower lip, the way she was suddenly both in control and waiting. "I should probably get back to these files," I said, though my voice cracked slightly. My papers no longer seemed relevant. I wanted to say something else, anything, but the words stuck in my throat. Her gaze softened, almost teasing, and I could swear she saw right through the professional mask I tried so hard to wear. And maybe she did. Maybe she saw the quiet longing I hadn't yet admitted to myself. A bead of sweat slid down my temple, unnoticed except by her. She leaned just a little closer to drop another file onto the desk, and the scent of her drew me in like gravity. I could feel the pulse in my neck, my own heartbeat suddenly loud in the silent office. For a moment we were suspended, two people on the edge of something unspoken, something forbidden. And then, as if the universe was keeping score, my phone buzzed. She glanced at it with a small frown, almost annoyed, but didn't move. The screen lit up with a message from my friend, completely irrelevant to her, but it shattered the fragile tension. I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I was holding, and our fingers lingered just a fraction too long as I picked up the device. Her eyes met mine again, and I caught a flash, a flicker of something I couldn't name. Anticipation, curiosity, maybe even the hint of a smile she wouldn't fully give. My chest tightened. Whatever this was, it was far from over. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, reality tugged at the edges of the moment, leaving me staring at her across the desk, wanting more but unsure how to reach it. The door remained locked, the lights hummed, and I knew, deep down, that nothing about tonight would be simple. The office felt smaller now, the quiet pressing in like it had a weight of its own. I kept my eyes on the files in front of me, though I could feel her presence behind, beside, everywhere I looked. Every movement she made seemed deliberate, careful, yet laced with something I couldn't name. "I didn't expect anyone to stay this late," she murmured, almost to herself. Her voice carried over the hum of the printer, and I caught the faintest tremor, like she wasn't used to being alone with someone else after hours. I glanced at her and realized how much I had been watching, how I'd memorized the way her hair fell across her shoulder, how her eyes darted to the clock, how her hands flexed when she was thinking. "I just didn't want to leave it unfinished," I said, hoping it sounded casual. Her lips curved in the smallest smile. "Perfectionist," she said, almost teasing, but her eyes held a shadow of something. Loneliness, maybe, or the guilt of always being the one who managed everything while missing everything else. I swallowed. She didn't need to say it. I could see it in the way her posture stiffened, the way she exhaled a little too sharply when a stack of papers fell to the floor. and I wanted to reach out, to steady her, to be closer, but there was a line I knew I shouldn't cross. "You ever regret staying late this often?" I asked, more out of curiosity than concern, though my voice betrayed a hint of hesitation. Her gaze lifted to meet mine, steady and piercing, and for a second, I thought she might laugh or scold me for the personal question. Instead, she just nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Sometimes," she said, and then she looked away, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The single word carried weight I didn't have words for. I wanted to ask why, wanted to pry, but I didn't. Instead, I found myself leaning closer as I handed her a file. Our fingers brushed again. Lightly, accidentally, or maybe not, and a shiver ran up my spine. She didn't pull away immediately. Her eyes lingered on mine for a fraction too long. There was an unspoken line we both knew existed. Age, status, professional boundaries. And yet, the small closeness, the warmth of her hand near mine, felt like a rebellion against that line. I started, but the words faltered. She was too captivating to speak around. Any words would betray my thoughts before I could hide them. She cleared her throat softly. "Be careful," she said. Her tone was gentle, almost maternal, almost flirtatious, and the ambiguity twisted inside me. Was it a warning, or something else entirely? We stood there, the office around us quiet, punctuated only by the ticking of the clock. My chest ached with longing, my mind replaying each glance, each accidental brush of fingers. And then, without realizing it, our shoulders touched as we reached for the same folder. The contact was brief, yet electric, and we both froze, knowing something had shifted. Her lips parted slightly, as if to speak, but then she stepped back, distancing herself with a faint sigh. The moment dissolved, leaving the air charged, heavy with what hadn't been said. I realized then that this attraction wasn't just dangerous because of boundaries, it was dangerous because it was inevitable. The office lights flickered briefly, and I cursed under my breath, fumbling with a stack of files. She was behind me, her presence close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off her. A quiet pull I couldn't resist. "You missed a signature here," she said softly, leaning over my shoulder. Her breath brushed the back of my neck. I stiffened, heart hammering. I'll fix it," I muttered, trying to sound steady. But every instinct screamed for me to just turn and look at her, to see her, fully, before some imagined line yanked us apart. She lingered, close enough that our hands almost touched again as she pointed at the form. The air was heavy, thick with tension neither of us named. I wanted to say something, anything, but my mouth felt suddenly dry. A notification pinged from her computer. She flinched slightly, just a small flicker, and glanced at the screen. Someone from her team had sent a message. Relief mixed with frustration as she straightened, breaking the proximity, but not entirely. The electricity in the air remained, humming between us. I caught a glimpse of her eyes as she looked back at me, and I thought I saw hesitation, maybe desire, mirrored in them. My pulse spiked. The risk of this, whatever this was suddenly so tangible. And yet I couldn't pull away. "You're very focused," she said finally, almost teasing, almost serious. Her tone held multiple meanings, and I was dizzy trying to parse them. I swallowed hard, feeling a strange mix of guilt and longing. I try." My voice was low, almost a whisper, and I could feel the closeness pressing in around us. Then, without thinking, my hand brushed against hers as I reached for a paper. Neither of us pulled back immediately. Her fingers twitched, just slightly, and I realized the world outside this office had ceased to exist for that brief moment. A knock echoed through the office. Sharp, intrusive. My head snapped up, heart thudding. "I'll get it," I muttered, stepping toward the door. But when I turned, she was standing there, closer than ever. Her eyes locked on mine. Something unspoken passed between us. A shared breath, a flicker of awareness that maybe we'd lingered too long in this charged space. I could feel it in the way her chest rose, in the subtle tremor of her hand. The knock came again, impatient, forcing her gaze away. She exhaled softly, almost inaudibly, and stepped back, leaving a sliver of the tension between us intact. My pulse raced. I wanted to say something reckless, forbidden, but the words never formed. Instead, we returned to our tasks, a little too close, a little too aware of the electricity sparking between us. Every movement was amplified. The brush of arms, the tilt of her head, the pause in her voice when she spoke. We were drawn to each other in ways that felt impossible to resist, yet equally impossible to name. And as I glanced at her, her eyes caught mine for the briefest second longer than appropriate. I realized that tonight, nothing would be simple. We were closer than ever, yet still bound by hesitation, guilt, and the weight of what others might think. And in that quiet, suspended moment, I knew the real danger wasn't someone walking in. It was that we might not be able to stop ourselves. The office was quieter than ever. Even the hum of the lights seemed muted, leaving space for the unspoken between us to thrum like a living thing. I couldn't focus on the files in front of me, their edges blurred under the weight of her presence. She was close again, leaning over the desk, pointing at a report. Her hair fell forward, brushing against my cheek, and I froze. My fingers itched to tuck it behind her ear, to feel the warmth of her skin against mine. My throat tightened, words lodged somewhere I couldn't reach. "You've been avoiding looking at me all evening," she said, voice low, teasing. But there was an edge to it, a sharpness that made my pulse spike. I'm just focused on the work," I muttered, trying to keep my tone steady, but it came out shaky. Her eyes softened slightly, but the smile that tugged at her lips was almost dangerous. "Focused or scared?" she asked, leaning in a fraction closer. Her breath brushed my ear. My chest tightened, heat spreading through me in ways I couldn't control. I could feel her closer than ever, the faint scent of her perfume, the warmth of her shoulder near mine. I wanted to reach for her hand, to touch her cheek, to close the distance entirely. Every fiber of me wanted it, yet a voice in my head screamed about lines, consequences, the impossible age gap that made this forbidden. "I can't stop thinking about you," I blurted before I could stop myself. My own words shocked me, raw and unfiltered. Her eyes widened just slightly. "You can't?" she whispered, a tremor in her voice I hadn't heard before. Her hand hovered near my arm, a mere inch away, as if she wanted to bridge the gap but feared the fall. I reached, almost instinctively, and brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. My fingers lingered a heartbeat longer than necessary, tracing the line of her jaw. She leaned into my touch, just slightly, and my breath hitched. The room seemed to shrink until it was just us, suspended in a charged, delicate bubble of desire and hesitation. "I shouldn't," she started, but the words faltered, caught between fear and longing. "I know," I said, my voice low, trembling, almost a whisper against her skin. "Neither of us should." But I trailed off because nothing could stop what was between us now. Her lips parted subtly, my chest constricted. Every instinct screamed for me to lean in, to close the remaining inches, to let the moment define us. And for a heartbeat it seemed like I would. Then, a sudden ping from her computer jolted her back, a sharp intrusion that tore through the delicate tension. Her eyes flicked toward the screen, and she stepped back, heart racing, leaving me with the ache of what hadn't yet happened. We were inches apart, breaths mingling, hearts hammering in a rhythm that was entirely ours. And for a fleeting, suspended second, it felt like the world had paused, waiting for a choice neither of us could ignore. The office felt smaller, heavier somehow, as if the walls had closed in just for us. I was straightening a stack of papers when I heard it, a soft clearing of a throat behind me. I turned, expecting it to be one of the late-night cleaners. But it wasn't. It was him, the junior from accounting, peering around the doorway with wide eyes. He froze when he saw us, and I realized too late that he must have overheard our earlier conversation. Maybe even more. My heart slammed. I stepped back, almost colliding with her desk. Her hand brushed mine in the retreat, a fleeting contact that set my nerves on fire. She caught my arm instinctively, steadying herself, but her eyes flashed panic, the tiniest tremor running through her fingers. I didn't. I stammered, words failing completely. She took a breath, calm on the outside, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw clenched, the subtle bite of her lower lip. "It doesn't matter," she said, voice tight but controlled. Yet her hand lingered near mine, almost defying the distance she tried to put between us. I could feel the electricity still humming in the space we hadn't entirely vacated. Every nerve ending was alert. Every glance, every brush of fabric against skin charged with something dangerous. He saw something? I asked quietly, my pulse hammering. She exhaled slowly, letting out the smallest sigh. He definitely saw more than he should have. Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp and searching, and for a second, all the restraint we'd been holding shattered. My chest ached not just with fear of exposure, but with something far more primal. The nearness of her, the way her body leaned subtly toward mine even in panic, the soft warmth radiating from her. It was intoxicating. I started again, but she held up a hand, cutting me off. "No," she said firmly. But the word did little to quell the surge between us. Her hand brushed against mine once more, lingering just long enough to make my pulse spike, and I realized that everything we'd been suppressing wasn't going away. Not now. Not ever. We stood there, inches apart, hearts racing in tandem, breaths shallow and fast. The office was quiet except for the soft whir of the printer, but the silence only magnified the tension. The unspoken words, the forbidden desire, the guilt, and the undeniable pull that had been building all night. "I can't. I don't know if we—" I started, voice low, trembling. "You will," she said, a whisper just above my ear. Her breath hitched slightly as she stepped closer, brushing against me as if the smallest motion could erase the boundary between us. My own hands itched to reach for her, to feel her, to cross the line we'd danced around for hours. The office door remained locked. The late-night quiet pressed in around us. And in that suspended moment, I realized something undeniable. Nothing, not fear, not shame, not the risk of being seen, could keep us apart for long. And then she made a decision, just the tiniest tilt of her chin toward me. A motion that spoke more than words ever could, pushing us toward the inevitable. Toward the climax we had been circling all night. The office had shrunk around us, every sound muted except for the quick, uneven beat of our hearts. She was inches away, so close I could feel the warmth radiating off her, the faint scent of her perfume brushing against me like a whisper. Her eyes searched mine, calm yet trembling, as if she were weighing every possibility, choice and consequence tangled together in her gaze. I could see the vulnerability hiding beneath her poised exterior, the fragile honesty she rarely let anyone witness. "I shouldn't," she began, but the words fell into the space between us, unfinished. I reached out almost instinctively, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Her shoulder shifted slightly, leaning toward my hand without fully committing, and the tiny motion made my pulse surge. "I know," I whispered, voice low, raw. "I shouldn't either. But here we are." She closed her eyes briefly, exhaling softly, and I realized how long we had been dancing around this. The hesitation, the guilt, the desire that refused to be silenced. My hand lingered near her face, her breath brushing against my skin, and every nerve in my body screamed to bridge the distance. "I've thought about this more than I should," I admitted, voice trembling despite myself. "More than I can control." Her lips parted slightly, and the faintest tremor ran through her fingers as she reached out, lightly brushing my arm. That small contact, so brief, so delicate, felt like an admission, a surrender, a question that demanded an answer. "I can't stop thinking about you either," she said, eyes locking with mine, and I felt the weight of every moment we'd shared, every stolen glance, every accidental touch, condensed into those 4 words. The world outside the office ceased to exist. There was no risk, no age gap, no judgment. Only this, her presence, mine, the charged electricity that had been building all night. I could feel the pull, the inevitability of it, and I knew that stepping back now would undo everything we had come to understand about each other. I leaned slightly closer, my forehead nearly touching hers. Her breath hitched, mine caught in response. Every hesitation, every fear, every whispered warning from our minds dissolved under the intensity of this shared moment. "I don't want to step back," I murmured. "Not now, not ever." Her hand traced the line of my jaw, trembling, but deliberate. "Then we face it together," she whispered, voice barely audible. And in that quiet confession, I understood her fully. Not just her desire, but her courage, her hesitation, and the weight of what she had carried alone for so long. We paused, hearts synchronized, breaths mingling, inches from crossing the threshold we had both longed for. No words remained, only the shared acknowledgement that we had chosen each other in that instant, messy, raw, human, and undeniably real. And then, with a subtle tilt of her head and a soft exhale, the tension broke. Not with a flourish, not with perfection, but with the clarity of 2 people finally seeing and accepting one another completely. The office lights had dimmed to a soft glow, casting long shadows that seemed to wrap around us, cocooning the space in quiet intimacy. I could feel her hand in mine, fingers intertwined, solid and grounding, yet tender. The hesitation, the guilt, the weight of the world outside, none of it mattered anymore. We sat side by side on the edge of her desk, knees brushing, shoulders barely apart, and for the first time, I felt like I could breathe fully. The tension that had carried us through the night, the unspoken longing, and the stolen glances, it all softened into something warmer, steadier. "You know," she whispered, leaning her head slightly against my shoulder, "I was afraid that this us was too complicated." I turned my head just enough to press a gentle kiss to her temple. "It's not simple," I admitted, voice low, "but it's real, and right now that's enough." She smiled softly, the kind of smile that reached her eyes and lingered in her chest. I could feel her heartbeat against mine, steady and deliberate, and it echoed the rhythm of my own. In that small, quiet space, the age gap, the office boundaries, the world outside, it all melted away, leaving only this truth between us. Her hand tightened slightly in mine, brushing over the back of my fingers. I lifted my thumb to trace the curve of her knuckles. A simple gesture, but full of everything we hadn't dared to say. "I want to be near you," I murmured. "And I want the same," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with certainty. She tilted her head up, and our foreheads touched in a silent acknowledgement of the night we had survived. The tension, the temptation, the near misses, and the choice we had made. For a long moment we just sat there, sharing the quiet, the warmth, the simple intimacy of presence. No words were needed. The air between us hummed with understanding, desire, and relief. Then she shifted, pressing a gentle kiss to my hand, and I felt the weight of every fear and doubt lift. I leaned in, resting my head against hers, and allowed the closeness we had longed for, feared, and almost lost to finally settle comfortably between us. The office no longer felt like a place of tension. It felt like the setting of a secret we could finally share, one that was ours alone, imperfect, messy, and undeniably real. As we sat together, fingers intertwined, the night outside quiet and indifferent, I realized we didn't need perfection. We just needed each other, here now, fully present. And as the lights hummed softly above, she whispered, "I'm glad we stayed." I squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth spread through me. "So am I." Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?